just to remind you about what we're going to be doing as we view this video. We're going to be using this chart, which we've talked about before, and we're going to be viewing a video. And as we're viewing the video, because it's very complex, the main idea is not going to be explicit. It is going to be implicit or hidden. And so you're going to have to go through these processes. You're going to have to be reading and watching in chunks. Okay, what is this part about? What is the author trying to say about this topic? And then as you continue to watch, you're going to be asking yourself, is this the same idea? Is this video showing me or saying to me the same idea? Or is this a new and different idea? Have we shifted from one idea to the other? And then you're going to want to be thinking about, how do these parts of this video fit together? Okay? How do these chunks teach me something about this topic? Okay, this is a PSA announcement, very short. It's about a minute and 30 seconds. Just give it a minute to shift. And then we're going to go ahead and listen to it. One more.
Do you want me to turn off the lights?
No, I think the lights are fine. Thank you for offering.
New York City, America's preeminent metropolis. 8 million people, the most densely populated urban center in the United States. But this enormous city's population...
Okay, I'm going to stop you there for a second, because remember I told you that this is a very short video. They're giving you lots of details right now, but you really don't have an idea what the main idea of this video is, because remember, it's hidden. So we're listening closely and we're thinking about these details, what they're telling us, what the author is trying to telling us by giving us these details. It moves very quickly.
New York City, America's preeminent metropolis. 8 million people, the most densely populated urban center in the United States. But this enormous city's population and geography make it especially vulnerable to emergencies. If a fire, hurricane, or blackout occurs, are you prepared?
In an emergency, are you prepared to make decisions to help ensure the safety of you and your family? Do you have a plan? Are you ready, New York? New York City is no stranger when it comes to the forces of nature. We've been hit by hurricanes, heat waves, and winter storms. But we're also vulnerable to disasters such as power outages, building collapses, and fires.
From flash floods to tornadoes, weather extremes have been on the rise. As a result, New York's aging water, power, and transportation grids may be disrupted.
New York City, just in its geographical location, is a problem with emergencies and catastrophic events.
And weather extremes often have devastating effects on New York City's infrastructure.
But if a hurricane followed a critical path and created a storm surge, you could have a wall of water 21 feet, much of lower Manhattan, the Bronx, all the airports would be underwater.
Okay, and it stops right there. All right, so what I want you to do, turn right now and talk to a shoulder partner and talk about the main ideas that you heard in this video. Go ahead and turn and talk.
So what I wrote down was,
Right here it is.
Find
Okay, so let's stop for a second and let's share some of the things that I heard you talking about. Okay. Ryan?
Do you want me to read all of them or just one?
Okay, you can start with one.
Okay. So I wrote the popularity of New York, and that's what I thought at first. And then
Do you think, what do you mean the popularity of New York?
like that it's really popular and that
Oh, I don't think they were saying that it's popular. I think they were talking about the population.
Oh.
Okay? All right, Amelia?
Like what's going on with New York? Like there's like storms and
Okay, well let's start at the beginning. I think that we're kind of all over the place here. What was the very first main idea? First of all, how many parts did you see to this video when you were watching it? How many chunks did you break it into? How many chunks? Okay, so what was your first chunk?
that there's a lot of people in New York and that a lot of things happen.
Okay, so that there are a lot of people in New York and that people could be in a dangerous situation. What was your second chunk?
That there's a lot of natural disasters that can happen.
Okay, and what was your third chunk?
That it's not safe because there's so much people because it's hard to evacuate because how in the end they showed the building halfway filled with water.
Okay, I'm just having a hard time getting that last chunk because I don't think they ever said anything about evacuating.
Maybe that was the second one because it's the natural disaster that made it fill up with water.
Okay, all right, can you see what she's talking about? How she broke it into chunks? Okay, remember that was the first part of our strategy is to break it into chunks as you're reading. Okay, so if you're talking about that first section, that first chunk where they're giving you the number of people and they're giving you all those statistics about New York, what was the main idea there? What was the main idea? Matthew?
What to do in case of an emergency evacuation?
Did they tell you what to do in case of an emergency evacuation? No, they didn't. Okay, so that was not what the main idea was. Ryan?
New York's natural hazards natural disasters.
Okay, the natural disasters though was in the second chunk. It wasn't in the first chunk. Go ahead.
Not to always be prepared because the population can.
Okay, Gianna, can you build on that? What she said?
I was gonna say that I made a connection between like cafeteria downstairs and what they were saying in the video. Like at the lunch they always tell us like in case there's an emergency we can't like hear if you are like being loud and they were saying like the
Okay.
population in New York can affect like getting to someone in case of an emergency.
Okay, so you're saying that first chunk is similar to what happens in the cafeteria and that what they're saying there is that there are so many people that we could be in a dangerous situation. Okay, all right. Gabriel, do you want to give a main idea for the first part or the second part?
Like how dangerous life can be in New York.
Life can be dangerous in New York. I mean, I think it could be dangerous anywhere, but in New York especially because there are so many people. Okay, and I think that's why the details that Ryan noticed. Okay, all right. What about that second chunk? What do you think they were trying to tell you about that second chunk? What was the author trying to say? Russie?
That the natural disasters in New York like greatly affect their city.
Okay, so that New York experiences lots of disasters, right? Natural and unnatural, right? Because you have fires and you have hurricanes and you have buildings collapsing. You have all kinds of disasters. So here you are. You live in a city that has lots of people. You're probably going to find yourself in an emergency situation. Also, the city is susceptible to lots of different types of disasters, and that people need to be prepared. Right? Can you see that? All right. So let's take a look at it again. This time, thinking about our chunks and seeing if we can clearly see the different main ideas that we have. I'm going to rewind it to the beginning.
New York City, America's preeminent metropolis. 8 million people, the most densely populated urban center in the United States. But this enormous city's population and geography make it especially vulnerable to emergencies. If a fire, hurricane, or blackout occurs, are you prepared?
In an emergency, are you prepared to make decisions to help ensure the safety of you and your family? Do you have a plan? Are you ready, New York?
Okay, so you can almost see that this becomes almost a natural chunk right here, right? Where they're asking people if they're prepared. They're saying, in this part here, is that in this densely populated city, your people are finding themselves in emergencies. And are you prepared to face those emergencies? Now, they're not giving us what to do. They're not telling us how to prepare. They're just asking us if we're prepared. All right? Let's look at the second part of this video and see what, remember, because we're thinking this implicit or hidden main idea, let's see what they're trying to say.
New York City is no stranger when it comes to the forces of nature. We've been hit by hurricanes, heat waves, and winter storms. But we're also vulnerable to disasters such as power outages, building collapses, and fires.
From flash floods to tornadoes, weather extremes have been on the rise. As a result, New York's aging water, power, and transportation grids may be disrupted.
New York City, just in its geographical location, is a problem with emergencies and catastrophic events.
And weather extremes often have devastating effects on New York City's infrastructure.
But if a hurricane followed a critical path and created a storm surge, you could have a wall of water 21 feet, much of lower Manhattan, the Bronx, all the airports would be underwater.
Okay, so we talked about this before, is that they're giving, in the second part, what were they doing? They were giving us what? Matthew?
That they're giving us, information of all the natural disasters that could happen in New York.
Right, in New York, remember they said was, uniquely situated, the location and the population, and they're telling you all of the things that New York has had happen there, right? They had that hurricane with the wall of water coming in. They talked about the fires, and they talked about the tornadoes. They showed pictures of all of those disasters that can happen, okay? So we have our two pieces. Remember the third part? Remember the third part of our strategy chart? Talked about how do these chunks go together? Okay, so turn and talk to a partner. How do these pieces go together? What is this PSA trying to say? Okay, all right, so let's think about how these two pieces go together and how we kind of get an idea of what the emergency response team for New York was trying to do to the readers and the listeners and the viewers with this video. So think about, how do the pieces go together? Callie, what do you think? Okay, so how do they do that? We talked about the first part. The first part talks about how the population is so dense and there are so many people there in the city that they experience all kind of emergencies. And then they come out and they say, are you prepared? All right, and then they start off the next one saying, are you prepared? And then it gives you a list of all the natural disasters, all of the things, the hazards like the fires and the buildings collapsing and all of those things about how the power grid and the water supply and transportation is all kind of susceptible in a case of an emergency like that. So what do you think the message is trying to be?
They're trying to get you.
They're trying to convince you to be prepared, right? So that the first part of the video is telling you this is a very densely populated city. This area experiences lots of emergencies. Are you prepared? The second part is showing you all of the different types of emergencies that New York City experiences, because they are trying to convince you that you should be prepared. They're not telling you how to prepare. They're not giving you steps or kits to pack or anything like that, evacuation routes. They're not telling you what to do, but they're telling you that you have to have a plan. You have to be prepared because chances are you're going to encounter some kind of an emergency when you're living in New York. To be prepared, okay? So can you see how we went through and we did each of the steps on that chart? First we chunked it, asked ourselves, what are they talking about here? What's the main idea? But that final piece, really and truly, is the most critical part, because that's the part where we're going to get the idea of what is the overall idea of this, is to convince people to be prepared. You don't get that. You don't get that unless you try to figure out how the parts are connected and how they fit together. So when you're taking your notes, when you're reading on Epic and you're reading your nonfiction Just Right book and you're taking notes, when you're trying to determine main idea and detail, don't forget that final piece when you get to the end of the book, to stop and ask yourself, how do these pieces fit together, and what exactly is the author trying to tell me about this topic?